is very important to us.
You're listening to Team Call with Beaksy, your direct line into daily conversations with the team behind one of Chicago's fastest growing Bitcoin startups. In each episode, you'll gain firsthand insight on topics ranging from entrepreneurship and operation strategy to technology and cryptocurrency market analysis. Whether you're looking to level up your trading acumen or you just want some alpha on how to run a startup in crypto land, you'll hear about it on Team Call. So who's already on? Beaksy's co-president, Bay Abbott, in addition to James Carney and Steve Sophocleos, who head up the marketing team, and Cooper Craighead, director of customer support. Let's join in.
Hey, what's up, man?
Oh, not a lot of. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
What's up, man?
Not much.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess it really depends on your audience, and like we've been increasing viewers every week. Well, viewers on YouTube, listeners on Apple and RSS, but a steady trickle of increase, which is always good. But I don't know if we're like too shallow or too deep for the guys that are listening. But I guess we're still increasing listeners, so there's some portion of something that they enjoy.
Very nice.
Yeah, I was going to say, interesting day in crypto land. Seems like we're in this kind of pre-pump. Maybe we're in the midst of a big macro kind of uptick, but I don't know, a lot of people on Twitter are like, shit's about to get totally wild.
Well, there's Ethereum breaking all-time highs every other day. Bitcoin looks like it wants to do the same.
Well, I posted about it earlier, but that whole ENS thing, I'm still like punching myself in the face, as I'm sure most people are. But like it would have been such an easy thing to see coming. It's so cheap before. What's it worth now? Like 50,000?
Something like that. Yeah.
Mind blowing. Only in
market is ripe with opportunity.
Yeah, only in crypto. I don't think anywhere else in any other industry in any part of the world do you just get $50,000 dumped on your head randomly.
Right.
Pretty cool. So what's the status with some of our exchange initiatives, Cooper? I know the team had told you that they had that one remaining callback issue with the widget operations that they may be able to solve in a day or two. What's that looking like?
Sorry. Also dealing with talking to Gunther about Gunbot freezing again. I honestly don't know. I'm having a hell of a time getting answers or progress reports or even a good understanding of what they're doing. I was supposed to talk to Michael today. He hasn't gotten back to me.
Okay. You sent him a message or an email or something?
We like went back and forth a couple times yesterday and just couldn't find like a time. And he said, yeah, let's do it sometime tomorrow. And I sent him a message saying, these are my availabilities tomorrow, and no response. And then I sent him another message this morning saying like, hey, like I'll be around for this time, like immediately, or, I'll be around in about an hour and a half. And then I'll be available like for the whole rest of the day. And he just hasn't even read that message. I got a huge message asking like what we plan to do with the logic flow for offering different payment providers. And then they want to know like, should we be going with simplex for everyone right away first? And I was like, where did you get that idea? No, I've never wavered on the very simple, the MVP that we described is what we want. Just do it now. Don't add more features. Don't make a dashboard. Don't change like the logic or the functionality.
The core precepts of the
or
thing.
Anything else. Just fix it in place, like fix what is broken right now. And then we can move forward and we can discuss like the best way to do all of these other things. But in the meantime, you're just like hemming and hawing and hemorrhaging money and doing nothing useful.
Right.
And one of the things I want to talk to Michael about is like the amount of pushback I'm getting from them, where it's like, no, we need to do this totally separate other thing instead. And I don't know if it's a matter of language barrier and it could be that I just don't have a fundamental understanding of how their insane code works to begin with. But it's like, to my mind, they're just making it substantially more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, without assuming too much, when there's so many different barriers, both the location being in remote, kind of a distributed team environment, plus like a language barrier, plus the technicals versus the project manager's barrier. There's 3 different hurdles to overcome there. So it can be super challenging. And also I feel like on both sides, things get just completely lost or clogged in translation between those 3 barriers that need to be cleared.
Yes. And then I feel like on top of it, the overall responsiveness is like not necessarily great.
Lackadaisical?
Yes. And hit or miss. I remember that I think the most entertaining example, which granted didn't happen to me, but was in kind of the early stages of development. There was a point where Ruben asked Ari a question in a chat, and it was something not frighteningly important, but pretty like important enough that you would want an answer. Ari answered him 2 months later.
Oh,
yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's Skype. So just like other chat programs, like the chats that don't have new messages in them slowly like filter to the bottom. And I remember seeing it like this chat that had been dormant for almost 2 months suddenly popping to the top. And it was just like, yes. Like it took him 2 months to say yes.
Wow.
So yeah, and like, I don't know. I've never been able to get a handle on their org chart whatsoever. It seems to be pretty liquid, to say the least.
Yeah, fluid for sure. So overall, kind of feels like, herding cats.
Yeah, nailing Jello to the wall.
On an inflatable tube in level 3 rapids.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just like, it's like I want to keep pushing on this, but I'm like splitting my time between trying to herd those cats and being as available as possible so that when they suddenly randomly pop up and are talking to me, we can have conversations. But there's still like a dozen other things going on, and I don't know. It's not always the easiest balance to strike. So like every once in a while I'll miss a message for like 30 minutes or something. And then it's like, oh no, I'm not going to get a hold of that person for another day.
Okay. What about some of the listing stuff that we've got coming up? Are we still on schedule for listing the new currency this week?
As far as I know, I need to see if Naeem actually did the restart yesterday. He said that he added all of those pairs.
Yeah, it looks like there's going to be 3 trading pairs for the new one, which is cool.
I mean, they'll be available on the back end, but okay. So he has not done a restart yet, or at least he hadn't as of yesterday. Let me just check in with him. I mean, I think depending on what we want to do, like we can try to launch currencies with a single trading pair, see if we get adoption. We can try and launch it with a couple of options, like either a stable coin and a fiat option, or stable coin or fiat option and a Bitcoin option, or one or the other. I feel like when we started doing things, everyone wanted Bitcoin pairs.
Yeah, I remember you told me that. Then it was all stable coin pairs, after shortly thereafter. At least last year it was.
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, most of the people who are getting into trading now don't really like think in sats.
Right. I know they've been trying to push that. I feel like a lot of the thought leaders in the space have been trying to get people to think in sats, but I don't think we're still a long way off. Don't you think?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I prefer trading against fiat anyway.
Really?
I think it's a lot more simpler, especially trading bots and other things.
I think you're going to have a drastic demise of fiat currencies, like, pre-World War II hyperinflation style, before people start talking in SAT. I don't know. We'll see. I'm talking about your average person who buys Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, we just got to wait for Bitcoin to become the global currency everywhere. And then everyone will finally adopt it.
Yeah. So, Cooper, I say that though, because I think this one that we're getting ready to list is a little bit different. I mean, it's a top 10 currency, right? So maybe having 3 pairs would behoove us. I mean, maybe people would appreciate that.
I mean, I think so. Like, I think getting more of the top 10 currencies, I think, can't possibly hurt us. And in the same vein, getting rid of some of our less active currencies, because one of the things that, all of those aggregator sites like CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko look at is how active all of your trading pairs are. So even if you have one that isn't doing a whole hell of a lot, that tends to drag down your score.
Let's see.
So
you think if we add 3 pairs, even if it's for the same asset, it kind of does us a little bit of a disservice in the volume bracket that we're currently in terms of rankings?
Maybe.
I'm saying, like, if we added 3 pairs with the same asset, and let's say, only one of them really gets the bulk of the trading, then those other 2 are sort of dragging us down? Or
it's less about volume and more about just any activity. Like CoinGecko in particular, like, checks to make sure that pairs are traded. I think it's like every couple hours or something. So even if there was like very light trading activity consistently, it could be $100 like every couple hours, as long as there are trades happening, then it doesn't necessarily matter. I think that then you sort of hit that second tier of optics where, like, okay, the trust rating is okay, but then people can look at the actual numbers and be like, well, there's no volume there. That isn't necessarily where I would want to trade. So I do think that just going on a shopping spree and adding multiple pairs for every currency every time may not be a great answer. Like, I know that everyone wants all the options all the time, but without, a user base that's actually trading all the options all the time, that actually hurts us more than it helps.
Okay. I know there was some movement on the Gunbot front. Can you give us an idea of what to hope for from that movement?
Well, trading history is working better. Placing orders is working better. Unfortunately, both Juggy and I had our bots freeze last night, kind of the issue that we have continued to have. Gunther says that he thinks that the bot stops getting responses from the API, but there's 2 APIs and 10 endpoints, and the endpoints don't necessarily all connect to the same thing. Like, the trade history endpoint connects to one database, the order history endpoint connects to another. So trying to track down what is breaking is really difficult if you don't know where the disconnect is happening. So I asked him for a debugging version of the bot, and he said that you just have to turn on this one option, which I already had on. And he is looking into it now. Like, I do think that ultimately he's probably right. That what's happening is that the bot, for whatever reason, like the connection to one of the APIs, one of the endpoints is breaking. And so the bot kind of continues, but one part of the functionality does not. And the problem there is kind of like multifaceted. On the one hand, the bot should be able to handle errors. Like it should be able to handle disconnects, and it should be able to handle, something going wrong, and there should be, a way to reconnect, a way for it to reestablish what it needs to. That would be, I think that would be incredibly useful. But at the same time, that isn't a problem that is shared with any other exchange. So, why would he build the functionality in for this one platform when it hasn't been necessary for however long the bot's been around?
Right.
I think years at this point. It would be better if the debug functionality were more accessible, like were a more realistic option. But there you run the risk, from his perspective, you run the risk of revealing too much of what the bot is doing. It's not open source. So he doesn't want to give away too much of how the bot functions. Yeah. So, I totally understand that not being a totally viable option for him. It would be great if our side had better logging. But the two APIs are managed by entirely different teams. And, it's possible that the issue is with the public API, which is effectively just a repackaging of the Deltix API. If that's the case, then we would actually have to talk to Deltix about it and see what the issue was, which, is a long conversation for sure.
You think? Well, is it one that's worth getting on the books at least? Maybe we can preempt it.
We already have other issues open with them that have been open for months.
Okay.
Which actually leads me to the next part. The one issue that I saw while the bot was cycling was that 100% market order issue, which they originally said they were going to fix in June, and then they pushed it back to December. So like my bot was trying to buy with all of my available funds, and couldn't. So it was just like had an error every single cycle for, I don't know, hours. So even if we get it to the point where the bot stops disconnecting, we're still going to hit that issue. Like it's still not going to function correctly because it won't, at least for this particular strategy, which is kind of a common like beginner strategy. It won't work correctly because functionally the platform won't let you use your entire balance to place an order.
Okay.
Yes, that is. I can sense in your tone that you are starting to get the same headache that I have right now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. As long as he's giving us some direct attention, there's an infinitesimal amount of light at the end of the tunnel for this gunbot thing. So that's good news, at least.
Yeah.
It's at least headed in the right direction. Slowly, it seems.
Yeah, ever so slowly. It's been like a year of beating my head against this thing. The biggest problem for me is like I'm very persistent, and I'm very good at figuring out ways to test something when I have some direction as to what I'm testing, and when I have like the tools to determine issues and measure them. But basically at this point, it feels like both sides are just sort of like giving me a giant shrug. And so I have no way to like narrowing it down at all at this point is just a very, very frustrating and painstaking process. And in a lot of ways, I'm kind of doing it on my own at this point, which is less than awesome.
Yeah. This gunbot thing has become a personal crusade for you more than just above and beyond the Call of Duty.
Yeah. I'm going to lose it if it never works.
Have you guys tried any of these blockchain gaming play to earn games at all? I'm just curious. I have no experience with them, but just sort of trying to get my feet wet.
I tried a couple of the earlier, not like no prizes, no payment sort of thing, just like the card games that are on chain so that you can, trade, sell, whatever your cards back and forth.
Okay.
Played a couple of those. Some were more interesting than others. I haven't gotten into any of the ones where there's an actual like tokenized payout or anything yet. Although one of the Solana NFTs that I decided to get into that immediately became worth basically nothing is one such game.
Which one's that? Is that a Rory?
No. That one
yeah, Rory's a big deal, right?
It is. That was the one that I like sold immediately for way more than I paid for it. Which was why I was like, oh, this is fun. Let's take some of that and spend it on other ones. And then those other ones were not so great.
That's kind of all NFTs on Solana right now. I don't think anything's performing all that well compared to a few months ago when everything was just going up 5-10x easy money.
Yeah. On OpenSea, punks are down like 94%. Like a lot of the stuff is taking a huge bath right now. I don't know why, which sucks because I was kind of at the point where I'm like, all right, I gotta get over the inertia and get my first NFT. But it seems like a lot of the stuff that was super cool is kind of like plummeting a little bit. Although you've got new players in the space that are coming up huge. I mean, Super Rare, for example, is up like 250%. So maybe it's just a different style of NFT that's sort of taking over for the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is, I think, Bitcoin and everything else like Ethereum breaking all-time highs. I think it's stealing the show. I don't think there's as much interest. But I think interest will flow back to NFTs at some point. It's in cycles. So right now it's large caps and some alts, and eventually it'll be micro caps, and then it'll flow into NFTs again. But if you're holding NFTs now, it just kind of sucks.
I mean, I do think that part of it was just the like hitting sort of the maximum saturation point where like when we were jumping on RRE, or however you actually pronounce that, that was sort of like Solana. Like there were Solana NFTs. It was still like not quite an emerging market, but like it hadn't quite completely exploded. And then within a week or two of that, there was like 15,000 more of them. And so many of them are just very obviously cash grabs.
Yeah.
Like they have no practical purpose. But also like even the ones that do purport to have, some functionality or a game or, something else attached to it to make them more interesting, they largely are using this sort of like ICOs were used in 2018 and 19, where like that's how a project is getting their funding. So they had they have an idea for a thing. They have no development on it. They have nothing, like there's no progress. There's no actual product yet. They just have like an idea and they're like, oh, we can just mint an NFT and get like $10 million. And then we'll have all the money we need to develop this thing. I know that's what happened with like the card game one that I ended up buying. They're like, oh, we're going to have a trailer explaining the game sometime in December. And I bought it like 2 months ago.
Oh, no.
So it's like, and, to their credit, they're still active. They're still engaging with their community and they're still like.
It's not a rug pull. It's just like it's so aggressive of a pivot that it feels like you were deceived from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that may be part of the cooling process for a lot of people is like a ton of people were in it, sure, just for quick money, which is fine. But then there became so many of them that like that the ability to resell them gets diluted very quickly. And then the people who are in it for like finding an interesting game or a cool virtual pet or fucking, whatever the end product is supposed to be, there's just this glut of options to choose from. And, it's going to be a lot like ICOs. Like the vast majority of these projects are never going to pan out. Like they're never actually going to release anything. And it was so fast and so smash and grab that I think it was really, really difficult for anyone to do any kind of due diligence. And like you can't vet a team that just shows up on Twitter and 2 weeks later they're minting a token and asking collectively for $5 million.
Right. I mean, to be fair, it wasn't much better pre-ICO with startup funding because it was a lot like that as well, but probably a little bit worse. But I mean, you have the same problem in the startup community, right? Like so many startups that take on millions in funding that end up crashing and burning. It's like 90% of these venture bets end up, failing, and the one that does make it pays for the ones that fail.
Pretty much. Well, and I think at that point, like, and maybe this is where the whole accredited investor thing comes from in the US, but, when you're talking about startups and that sort of thing, like until like Kickstarter and that model came around, it was all, venture capital firms and like private investors and things like that were investing. So like they can do due diligence and they can require like, a bunch of back and forth. And there's like some level of accountability, even if the product, whatever the product is, ends up failing or never making it to market or, whatever, there's like a relationship that's built.
Thanks for joining us on Team Call. We'd love to connect with you outside of the podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Beaksy Exchange and at Bade Bitcoin. You can also find us on YouTube by searching Beaksy Exchange and at Beaksy, BEAXY.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, cheers.
Thank you for calling.